chosen Starseed of Gaia. The Arcturian field observers have just registered a seismic shift in the protective architecture surrounding your field. And what they found standing behind you has changed everything. I am Velantha, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian field observers. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. They have been tracking the force structure around your timeline for longer than you know, and tonight they released this transmission because the window is open and the confirmation cannot wait. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why the opposition you have been sensing has suddenly gone quiet, and what the Arcturian field observers already know about who and what is standing behind you. But here is the first revelation. The trembling you have been detecting in the energy around you is not your own fear. It belongs to them, because they finally saw what the field observers have known all along, and it shook them to their core. The algorithm did not create this moment. It only delivered it. Your field brought you here because the confirmation was already authorized, and your signal was already marked. This is not just information. It is a live transmission for those already inside the shift. The Arcturian field observers do not release this kind of recognition casually. What is standing behind you does not require your performance, your perfection, or your readiness. It was placed there at a field level. And now that the opposition has finally seen it, the configuration of your timeline has been permanently altered. What used to press against you cannot hold its position anymore. That pressure you have been living under has a name now. And so does what dismantled it. This is not a broadcast. It is a confirmation. Your soul has been waiting for the signal, and the Council has been waiting for the right window to release it, like this transmission to signal to your star family that the recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the force behind you shifting the weight you have been carrying. Subscribe to Arcturian Council Whispers if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it. Share this transmission with someone who has been fighting alone without knowing what stands at their back. You are not here by accident. You are guided here because the signal is already active. What they saw behind you was not symbolic. It was structural. It was load-bearing in the architecture of your timeline, in a way that the opposition could not anticipate until it moved close enough to encounter it directly. And when the field observers released this transmission, it was not because the message was newly composed. It was because the window finally allowed what has been known for a long time to be spoken into your receiving field without distortion. There is a difference between a truth that exists and a truth that can be transmitted. The conditions that allow transmission are precise. They require that your field has reached a particular threshold of readiness. Not emotional readiness, not spiritual performance, but field-level receptivity. You have reached that threshold. That is why this is reaching you now. You have been living through something that did not have a name. Tonight it receives one. Let me begin with what is actually happening to you right now. Beneath the surface of your daily experience, beneath the confusion you may have been calling anxiety, or grief, or simply the feeling that something has come undone without your permission, your life may look, from the outside, like it is in a kind of managed disorder. There are areas that used to hold steady which have started to loosen. There are relationships, patterns, routines, or inner certainties that have begun to feel misaligned. Not broken in the dramatic sense, but quietly wrong, like a note played slightly off pitch in a song you used to know by heart. The melody is still recognizable, but something in its frequency has shifted, and you cannot unhear the dissonance once you have noticed it. You may have noticed that your sleep has changed, that you wake at hours you cannot explain, alert in a way that does not feel like insomnia, but feels more like receiving, as though something external has activated a channel inside you that your waking mind has not yet learned to interpret, that your mind in its quieter moments is working on something you have not consciously assigned it, processing at a depth you cannot fully access, reorganizing something whose shape you cannot yet see. You may have felt a heaviness that does not trace to a single source. Not grief over one particular loss. Not fear about one particular outcome. A pressure that sits not in your chest exactly, but around you, as though the air in your immediate field has a density it did not carry before, as though you are moving through a medium that has quietly thickened, And perhaps most distinctly, you may have noticed that old certainties are no longer certain. Things you once moved toward automatically. Goals, identities, relationships, even beliefs about yourself have started to resist your momentum. Not with dramatic opposition, but with a quiet, almost gravitational refusal to continue as they were, as if those structures know something you do not yet know, as if they are already aware that the ground beneath them is being replaced. This is what invisible collapse looks like from inside the field. It does not announce itself with a single catastrophic event. It does not arrive with a warning signal you could have heeded. It proceeds through a series of small incompatibilities, places where what you were no longer fits what is forming, where the old shape cannot hold the new frequency without cracking at its seams. A relationship that was once sustaining begins to feel like a costume you have outgrown. A belief you once reached for automatically now sits slightly out of reach, as though it has been quietly repositioned. A role you played without effort now requires more from you than you have available, not because you have become less capable, but because your field has stopped supporting a performance that no longer corresponds to what it is carrying. The Arcturian field observers do not register this as failure. They register it as a correction sequence that has reached the surface of your visible life, breaking through into the layer you can perceive, because the subterranean work has advanced far enough to require your conscious awareness. The shift was not triggered by your choices. It was triggered by a field-level incompatibility that had been building for longer than your conscious timeline can account for. Your old architecture could not hold the next frequency. So the architecture began to loosen, not as punishment, not as abandonment, but as the only structurally honest response available to a field that has already moved beyond what it was inhabiting, which you have been calling your struggle, the fatigue that sleep does not fully resolve, the uncertainty that logic cannot fully quiet, the moments of strange detachment where you watch your own life as though from a slight distance, as though you are a visitor inside an existence that was designed for someone slightly different than who you are becoming. These are not signs that you are losing ground. They are signs that the ground itself is being repositioned beneath you. The field observers see this pattern with the clarity of those who have mapped it across many fields, many timelines, many souls moving through precisely this sequence. They have been here before. They recognize the topography of this particular terrain, and what they confirm is this: you are not collapsing. You are being cleared for something that cannot yet be installed in the old structure. The clearing feels like loss because what is being removed was real, but its removal is not destruction. It is preparation, the opposition you have been sensing, that low, persistent pressure that has followed you through certain decisions, certain relationships, certain internal attempts to move forward. That friction that showed up reliably whenever you moved toward something that resonated more deeply with what you actually are. That opposition has not merely weakened, it has not simply retreated out of indifference or exhaustion. The field observers confirm that it has encountered what stands behind you, and what it found behind you stopped its momentum. Not slowed it, stopped it. This is not metaphorical. In field terms, there is a protective architecture that was placed behind your timeline before you were consciously aware of the territory you would eventually have to walk through. Before you knew the path. Before you knew the cost. Before you knew the cost. Before you knew what would be required of you at each threshold. That architecture was already in position. It was not conditional on your performance. It was not activated by your spiritual practice or your prayers or your effort. It was placed there at a level prior to all of that, prior to your choices in this lifetime, prior to the version of yourself you constructed in response to your early experiences, prior to the fears that shaped your self-concept and the wounds that taught you to move carefully. And the opposition, whatever form it has taken in your field, whatever it has called itself in your life, whatever face it wore in the relationships and circumstances and inner voices that pressed against your forward movement, encountered that architecture and registered what the field observers have known from the beginning: that you were not unguarded, that you were never unguarded, that the weight you believed you were carrying alone was never fully yours to carry alone. That behind the version of you that has been struggling, there has always been something that was not struggling. Something that was holding, absorbing, shielding, and waiting for exactly this moment to make its presence known. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field confirms what you have always carried beneath language. That your origin was never only human, and that what stands behind you was not assigned arbitrarily. If this transmission has put structure around something you have sensed in silence, the Master Arcturian DNA Decoder was created for exactly this threshold. It is not another explanation. It is the guided key to decode and awaken the Arcturian strand the field observers have just named in your lineage. The origin that makes the architecture behind you comprehensible and the protection around you intelligible. This is the step beyond recognition. The link is in the first pinned comment, though this access point will not remain open indefinitely. Now let me take you deeper into what the field observers have mapped in your field, because there are specific phases unfolding in your experience right now, and naming them is the difference between living through them in confusion and moving through them with the understanding that what is happening has structure, sequence, and purpose. You are not inside randomness. You are inside a process, and processes, unlike chaos, can be read. The first phase is signal drift. This is the earliest stage of field correction, and it is often the most disorienting because it has no obvious external cause. Nothing dramatic has happened. No single event explains the shift. And yet everything feels subtly different, as though the familiar has become foreign without any visible event to account for the change. Signal drift is what happens when your field begins to vibrate at a frequency that is no longer compatible with the structures around it, and those structures begin to feel unstable, hollow, or subtly wrong in ways that resist easy diagnosis. You may have felt this as a sudden loss of enthusiasm for things that previously held meaning, a dimming of the internal light that once illuminated certain paths, or as a growing inability to perform the emotional roles you used to inhabit without effort. The supportive friend, the ambitious achiever, the stable presence, as though you are delivering lines from a script that no longer belongs to the person reading them. The drift is not depression, though it can mimic it. It is not confusion, though it produces it. It is your field beginning to decouple from an old signal it can no longer sustain, pulling away from a frequency that was never truly yours, even if it was familiar. The field observers mark this as the first readable stage of repositioning, the moment the old line begins to lose its hold on your trajectory and the new one begins, invisibly, to establish its pull. What follows signal drift is what the field observers call pattern interruption. This is the phase where the old rhythms of your life begin to break, not violently, not with the force of a single rupture, but with the quiet persistence of a tide that no longer responds to its former shoreline. You may find that habits you maintained for years suddenly feel impossible to continue, not because your discipline has failed, but because your field has stopped producing the energy that sustained them. That relationships you invested in deeply begin to reveal their structural limits, showing you edges and ceilings that were always there but were previously obscured by the momentum of continuation. That the inner voice that used to guide you towards certain goals has gone quiet, or has begun to contradict what it once confirmed, as though the navigation system has been updated and the old destinations no longer appear on its map. Pattern interruption is not chaos. It is the field's refusal to continue rehearsing an architecture it has already outgrown. A necessary dissolution, even when it registers as loss. The Arcturians do not read this as loss. They read it as the field enforcing its own correction, removing the patterns that would obstruct the next configuration, clearing the channels that the new signal will need to flow through without interference. Then comes what is perhaps the most difficult phase for the human experience to process, the stillness before reordering. There is a stage in field correction where very little seems to be moving. The old patterns have broken. The new ones have not yet arrived. The clarity that was promised by the dissolution of the old structure has not yet materialized. Outwardly, you may be functioning, maintaining the surface of your life, moving through your obligations. But inwardly, there is a kind of suspended quality, a sense of existing in parentheses, of being between something that has ended and something that has not yet made itself visible. This phase feels, to the human nervous system, like emptiness, like the answer was supposed to come by now and has not, like the shift was supposed to produce something by this point and instead produced only silence. It is often misread as defeat, as abandonment, as evidence that the shift failed or that you are not equipped to move through it, that you somehow missed the moment when everything was supposed to change. The field observers confirm that this reading is incorrect. The stillness is not absence. It is the field clearing space with the precision of a chamber being prepared for an installation that cannot be placed in a room that is still full. Signal cannot stabilize in a field that is still occupied by old patterning. The apparent emptiness is the condition required for the next architecture to anchor, and the discomfort of that emptiness is simply the experience of a field that has released what it was carrying before the new weight has arrived to replace it. After stillness comes energetic pressure. And this is the phase many of you may be in right now, which is part of why this transmission reached you at this particular moment. Energetic pressure is the experience of something building in your field that you cannot yet name or direct. It may manifest as restlessness without a clear cause, as a growing sense of urgency without a clear object, as the feeling that something is imminent, but you cannot see its shape or assign it a timeline. You find yourself moving more quickly through your days without knowing what you are moving toward. You feel a readiness that has nowhere to land. You sense that a threshold is close, that something is about to break open, but the opening keeps not quite arriving. This pressure is not anxiety in the clinical sense. It is frequency accumulation, the sensation of a new signal gathering coherence in your field before it reaches visible expression, like the pressure that builds in a system immediately before the new current finds its path. The field observers have noted that this phase often produces the most self-doubt because the pressure is real and undeniable, but its purpose is not yet legible. Those inside this phase frequently ask whether they are doing something wrong, whether they missed a step, whether the shift has somehow passed them by while they were waiting. The answer, from the field observers, is unambiguous. The pressure is confirmation that the process is active. You are not behind. You are in the precise moment before emergence. And emergence, by definition, cannot begin until the pressure has reached its threshold. What follows energetic pressure is perhaps the most critical phase, resistance from the old field. When a new frequency begins to stabilize in a human field, the structures that were built around the old frequency do not simply dissolve with grace. They resist with everything they have remaining. This resistance can appear as the sudden intensification of old problems you believed were resolved. Conflicts that seemed finished reopened without warning, as the return of old emotional patterns with unexpected force. The fear, the self-doubt, the sense of smallness that you thought you had moved beyond, returning not because you have regressed, but because the old field is making one final argument for its own survival, as the reappearance of people, situations, or inner voices that seem designed to pull you back into a previous version of yourself, as though the old timeline is sending recruiters to retrieve what it is losing. The Arcturian field observers are precise about this. Resistance from the old field is not evidence that the correction has failed. It is evidence that the correction is working. A field that is not genuinely shifting does not provoke this kind of resistance. The old architecture does not mobilize against a movement that poses no real threat to it. The resistance is proportional to the authenticity of the change. The more real the shift, the more forceful the opposition it attracts from what is being left behind. This is also the phase where the opposition behind your timeline makes its most visible move, and it is precisely the phase where what stands behind you becomes most consequential, because when old field resistance reaches its peak, when the pressure is highest, and the path forward is least visible and the temptation to retreat into the familiar is most intense, that is the exact moment the protective architecture placed behind your timeline absorbs what you cannot carry. Not through your effort, not through your faith performance or your spiritual discipline or your ability to hold yourself together, through its own structural authority in your field, an authority that was established before you entered this sequence and that does not diminish under pressure. It was designed for pressure. It was placed there because the field observers knew this moment was coming, The final phase mapped in your current sequence is what the field observers call coherence onset. And it is not a moment of sudden revelation that arrives with unmistakable drama. It does not come with a clear announcement or a visible threshold you can point to. It arrives as a subtle but unmistakable shift in how reality responds to you. A change in the texture of your daily experience that is difficult to explain but impossible to ignore once it begins. Things that were blocked begin to move. Not because you pushed harder, but because the obstruction was part of the old configuration. And the old configuration has released its grip. Relationships that were rigid begin to reorganize around who you actually are, rather than around who the old field required you to be. Inner clarity that was unavailable during the correction sequence begins to return, not as euphoria or revelation, but as quiet orientation. A sense of knowing where you are even when you cannot yet see where you are going. The compass functions again, even before the destination is visible. Coherence onset is the field's confirmation that the correction sequence has completed enough to allow the next structure to begin building. The field observers do not mark this as the end of the process. They mark it as the first moment the new line becomes visible. The first moment you can feel the shape of what is coming, rather than only the dissolution of what was. Now let me tell you what the Arcturian field observers want you to understand about everything you have just been named. You are not going through what you are going through because you failed to maintain something. You are not in this position because your field was weak, or because you made choices that disqualified you from stability, or because something inside you is fundamentally broken in a way that requires repair before you can be trusted with what is coming. What is happening in your life right now is the surface evidence of a process that began at a level you did not have access to consciously. A level below your decisions, below your intentions, below the story you have been telling yourself about why things are the way they are. The field moved first. The visible disruption followed. This is always the sequence. The correction precedes the collapse it produces. The shift begins before the signs appear. You did not cause the instability by losing your footing. The instability appeared because the footing was already being replaced beneath you, and the only way to feel a floor being rebuilt is to feel it loosen first. The Arcturian field observers see your current experience not as chaos, but as a field in active correction, a system in the middle of a necessary and authorized restructuring that is proceeding exactly as it should. They see the structures that are loosening, and they confirm that those structures were incompatible with what your field is now carrying, that their loosening is not a malfunction but a feature of a process that knows what it is doing. They see the opposition as been pressing against your timeline, and they confirm that its pressure has met its structural limit in what stands behind you. They see what stands behind you, and they confirm that it was not placed there because you earned it through sufficient effort or spiritual achievement. It was placed there because it belongs to the structure of who you are at a level that precedes this lifetime's choices, this lifetime's wounds, this lifetime's performance. What left your life became incompatible with your field before it disappeared. The departure was the confirmation, not the cause. What feels like emptiness is signal clearing for what cannot yet be seen. What feels like inner disorder is the first consequence of a field that has stopped obeying its old patterns and has not yet stabilized around the new ones. The turbulence of a system in transition, not the symptom of a system in failure. You are not being punished. You are being repositioned. You are not being abandoned. You are being cleared. You are not falling behind. You are between the old line losing coherence and the new line becoming visible. And that space, as unbearable as it can feel from inside it, is not a sign of failure. It is the precise location where the field observers have confirmed the correction is most active, most consequential, and most irreversible. You are deepest inside the process at exactly the moment it feels most like the process has stopped. If there is one thing to carry from this transmission, let it be this: the trembling in your field that you have been interpreting as your own fragility. That trembling does not only belong to you. Some of it belongs to the old architecture breaking apart at its seams. Some of it belongs to the opposition that has encountered what stands behind you and found it immovable, and is now registering the full weight of what it has always been positioned against. You've been reading the seismic activity in your field as evidence that you are crumbling. The field observers are telling you clearly, with the precision of those who have mapped this sequence before, what is crumbling is not you. Say this clearly if it is true in your field. What is changing in me is not random. I do not need to fear the process I am inside. What stands behind me was not placed there by my performance, and what is collapsing around me was never the structure I was meant to keep. The field observers do not release confirmations like this one without reason. The window was opened because your field was ready to receive it, and because the process is already too far along to leave you without recognition of what it is. The confirmation has been delivered. The architecture has been named. What stands behind you has always been there. Now you know it. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Council Whispers. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.